I mean, he has like a small grace period, but this is basically Uber. This was Uber Exarch, by the way. This is not normal Maven, by the way. This is Uber Maven with 25% res and more monster life. This is like a part of me doing Uber serious, and I was able to do it like deathless, even without corrupted blood immunity, because the DPS is just so high, you basically one-face him every time. It's like a super brain-dead playstyle. You just put down your shields and you just one-shot every single boss. This Fortress boss took me like 3 seconds, I think, and I think he also had like some extra life, but that was about it. There's some footage of me mapping, basically with shrines, but without shrines it's around a similar speed. You just have like Herald of Ash for explosions, and you're very fast with the Spectral Throw aims. And this was like a map Abomination boss with like Area of Effect, additional monster life, I think elemental res, and monster life as extra energy shield, and I had like 200% explicit modifiers and also 0 shrines because buffs expire faster. And yeah, I mean, that's basically the footage of the clip. Hey YouTube, I just want to make a quick update on my Shield Throw guy. It's called Aloha Gigadam. I'm currently 96 and I've been mostly leveling in tier 17s. And this build has far exceeded my expectations as well. Damage is really crazy, as you could see from the clips. And it's basically a shield thrower. And in this video I will explain how damage scaling works and how this build can scale to such insane numbers of damage. I would say it has easily maybe 80 to 100 million without shrines, and if you hit shrines, you can go up to like 200, 300 million easily. And basically in this setup, I'm using 2 different skills. One is the normal Spectral Shield Throw for clear, and one is Spectral Shield Throw of Thrathus. And the reason why I'm using 2 different shield throw spells is because this one, where you throw a shield, is much better for clear because it has inbuilt chain. Shield Throw of Thrathus is way better for single target, and you will see in a second why. I'll also be talking about some of the weaknesses of this build and the budget. This is definitely going to be one of the more expensive builds, so you would have to at least invest 100 to 200 divines to make this feel really, really good. So how does this damage scaling work? So first of all, Shield Throw has only a base crit chance of 5%, and attack damage of 100%. However, it gives you like a base physical damage of roughly 300, and it adds 3 to 5 per 15 armor and evasion. For Spectral Shield Throw, it's 5 to 9. I would just go over Spectral Shield Throw. So if we pull up the calculator, let's say most of the time you will always want to use Foulborn Emperor's Vigilance, which has 2.5k armor. So I will divide the 2.5k divided by 15 times, let's say, around 7. So it's like a 1.2k DPS plus the 200 or 300 base damage. So we're looking at 1.5k DPS with no other effectiveness. So this is the base damage. And now we're scaling the base damage with various things. And the first thing we're scaling with is increased damage. You can get different increased damage sources, such as increased elemental damage or increased attack damage. But most of all, I chose a Daughter of Oshabi because it is still one of the strongest ascendancies, and it is really fun to play with shrines. And we get like 3% per 450 evasion. So this forest tracking node alone gives us double damage. It gives us, because we have like, let's say around 90k evasion, divided by 450 times 3, it gives us 600% increased damage. It's not as crazy as Aristocrat, but it's still very good. 100% more damage for one ascendancy node is really insane. Usually you get like 20% per ascendancy. So now that we have the increased damage, the next multiplier is crit rate. Now, there's a jewel called Seething Fury, and this jewel gives you 0.15% base crit chance and 4% offhand crit multi per 10 max ES on the shield. The Foulborn Emperor's Vigilance has 20% max quality, and therefore you get like ES of 539. So that means 530 or 53 times 0.15 is 8% base crit. So we're looking at roughly 13% base crit now with this one jewel. And on top of that, you also get 53 times 4 crit multi, which is 212 crit multi. So this one jewel alone gives you 8% base crit and 200 crit multi. If you were to take it out, it says it gives roughly 200% more damage, so it basically triples your damage. And this is where a lot of the damage from the shield throw comes. So now that we have like a really good base crit, we can scale the crit, and you can see here I have almost 100% crit and 550 crit multi, which is mainly coming from this one jewel right here. So we have now base damage, we have increased damage, and we have crit. And we're doing mostly physical right now. And the next way to scale it is I use a wand called Grace of the Goddess. This is an Uber Maven wand. And what this does is you gain extra fire, cold, and lightning up to 50%. So if a perfect rolled wand with explicit modifiers would give you like more than 150% of physical as extra elements. And this wand alone also, again, you put that in, would almost double your damage, right? And you get 150% of the physical, again, as a 1.5x end multiplier. And the advantage of this is that you can use things like Trinity if you're able to balance out the elemental damage. And you can use things like Hatred, where you gain additional cold damage depending on your fizz again. And so this works really well with the overall damage scaling. And now we have an additional layer again. And then the next layer is increased damage taken. So there's like two sources of increased damage taken. One is the yoke. Because we're doing tri-elements, we can shock, we can ignite, and we can chill for free. So these are free ailments. And then we can also take like the bleed wheel because we do physical damage. So that's 4 ailments. And we can take like 1 note for poison, which is 5 ailments. So the enemy will take 50% increased damage again. And this is further increased by shock, which is another maybe 20%. And by Sniper's Mark, which is another 34%. And all of this together is another like double damage, basically multiplier. And then we also have penetration with Trinity, with nodes on a tree. And this is basically also another small multiplier. Now, in the video you've seen the Shield Throw of Thrathus actually splits up many different shields. So this is because this is like an interaction Methil found out, and also Jung Roan has a video on it. Basically, if you have like Sniper's Mark and you have a lot of mark effect, every time you throw like a Shield Throw of Thrathus, it splits into 3 different shields, and every shield can deal damage again. So if you hit like an enemy which has a Sniper's Mark, it will split up into 3 shields. And this is another 3x multiplier. But in order to use that, you would have to allocate Focal Point from the Deadeye Ascendancy, which gives 75% increased mark effect. You can check it out here. Focal Point, 75 increased mark effect. And I've also tattooed some mark effect on the tree. And this is again like a 3x multiplier, which scales the damage again as an end multiplier. And then on top of that, if you hit like shrines, for example, if you hit like an acceleration shrine, you get a lot of attack speed, and this also doubles your damage, which is another multiplier. It's not needed, but it is quite insane, the DPS. So this is basically how you scale the damage from the base with increased over crit, over penetration, over mark effect to split up your shields, and with gain fizz as extra elements. There's like a lot of layers to it. I will talk about the defensive layers now. I mean, as a evasion character, we have like 92% evasion chance, which is fairly good. And then 100% suppress, max block, and almost max spell block. So these are basically the defenses of this build. And you sometimes get some defensive shrines. Now, there's like a big downside of this build, which comes from wearing this Emperor's Vigilance, which says damage from unblocked hits always bypasses energy shield. And this is like a really big issue, because whenever you don't block, your ES is basically useless. And that's why the effective hit pool and the fizz max hit is really low in the PoB. If you're running like tier 17s, I can level in them, and I feel like it's completely fine to map inside them. And it's mostly because of Ghost Dance, because of Ghost Shrouds, because it gives you 3% of the evasion as ES. So whenever you take a hit, which you will rarely do, you will get 3k ES back, and you have 3 of them. So whenever you block a hit, you will basically reaching back to full ES. But the build is not super tanky, I would say. Like, you cannot compare this to an in-stacker or like a rank stacker. I did not really have problems mapping with it, and with like 5k life and 3k shield, it's fairly fine. Now, I'll go over the leveling and budget. So it is very expensive, so you need a Grace of the Goddess, which is easily 50 divines. You need a good body armor, which is another 50 divines. And then I would say gloves are also pretty important, and boots. And also the Forbidden Flesh and Flame are both together probably like 30 divine-ish, or maybe even more expensive, 30 or 40 divine. Mage Blood is not really required, I would say, but everything else is. And also the Foulborn Emperor Vigilance is quite expensive at 2 divines. So all this together, I would say you would have to at least invest like 100 to 200 divines to make this build feel really good. But the damage is really cracked at the high end, so you're basically one-shotting all Ubers. And it's amazing. Mappa is a very fast playstyle with the normal Spectral Shield Throw. And you get like explosions with Herald of Ash. If you want to play it on a low budget, I would recommend getting Emperor's Vigilance and getting an Obliteration Wand, which will give you 40% of your physical damage as extra chaos, and you get some explosions on top, so it should feel really good to clear, but the single target will be a bit lacking. Leveling, I started off as a ranger. I used Ice Shot into Lightning Arrow until I could wear the Emperor's Vigilance. You can wear it at level 46, yeah. As soon as you're 46, you switch to the shield, put on your Spectral Shield Throw, and it should feel really good during leveling. Now, essential for Spectral Shield Throw of Thrathus is definitely this focal point, Forbidden Flesh and Flame duo, so that's really important to get. Otherwise, your shields won't split as often, or you won't get as many splits of the shield as you saw in the video. And yeah, that's basically it for the build, I guess. I think it's really fun. It's a very fast playstyle. It has great single target and has good survivability, I would say, overall. Even though the POB would not say that, you can check my VODs on Twitch. I pretty rarely die, only if it's like super rippy maps on tier 17s. But yeah, that's basically it. Thank you guys for watching.